In today's gospel, we hear Jesus reproaching the towns of Chorazin, Bethsaida, and Capernaum. But what was it that Jesus was most disappointed about? Well, I think the greatest problem that these towns were facing was not that they had sinned, but that they refused to see the deeds of Jesus as telling them to return to God. In other words, it was a failure to acknowledge the presence of God that was most critical to them, because if they had realized the presence of God, they would return to Him. We saw a similar situation with King Ahaz and his people in today's first reading. You know, the book of Isaiah says that when the king heard that his enemies were surrounding him, all their hearts shuddered as the trees of the forest shudder in front of the wind. But precisely the reason why they were so afraid was because they failed to realize the workings of God, the God who was among them, and hence they did not have faith in the power of this God to save them. And consequently, God had to send Isaiah to Ahaz to remind him to stand by him. So today we are also asked to examine whether we are aware of the workings of God around us as well. You know, while we are often flooded with all the bad news that happen in our world, we can be blind to the goodness and beauty of God among us. You know, we may not see the kindness of another person, or the love of family and friends, or the security and comfort that we enjoy as being signs of God's work in our lives. And hence, we are asked today to look again at what God is doing at this moment in our lives. Now, in St. Camillus, we see someone who was alert to the message of repentance from God, calling him to be someone greater than he was. You know, as a young soldier, Camillus was living a wayward life, often spending his time gambling and gaming and losing his money. But eventually he realized that God was calling him to a life that was more worthwhile and more fulfilling. So he began to work in hospitals as a servant of the sick. And after he was ordained a priest, he founded a congregation that specifically specializes in administering to the sick. And we still have the Camillians who are with us in Western Sydney at this time. So as the patron of hospitals and of the sick, we ask for St. Camillus' intercession this day, particularly during this coronavirus pandemic, but also that he may help us to see the workings of God in our world, so that we may turn to God when He calls us to Himself.